First, I want to say that law enforcement cannot combat crime alone. It is a collaborative effort. I want to thank all of our other government entities, nonprofit organizations, our faith-based community, and citizens for providing tips and important information to us on suspicious activity. I have to stress this, and when you quote me a year from now, I want you to hear this correctly. We cannot do this alone. Citizens are a huge part of this. Law enforcement alone cannot make our communities safe. I'm extremely proud of the dedication and hard work that our officers and detectives have put into assisting with a recent joint operation that has resulted in the apprehension of many dangerous criminals. Illegal narcotics in the hands of criminals is a dangerous problem that we will continue to combat on the front lines. I am thankful for the strong partnerships we have at the local, state, and federal level. Our department will diligently work to pursue and prosecute those responsible for illegal activities to foster a safer community for our citizens to live, work, and play in. I'm also grateful to our U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District, Michael Easley, and the impressive work that his office is doing to help us make sure that these cases make it over the finish line. And I am equally grateful for all the work that has been done for many years by our soon-to-be retired District Attorney, Ben David, in his office. The recent roundup of criminals is a testament to the success that can come through collaboration. And again, not a law enforcement only collaboration, this is a community effort. At the Wilmington Police Department, we're doing our part to keep dangerous weapons out of the hands of juveniles and felons within our community. Our gun crimes unit works diligently day in and day out to investigate cases alongside our detectives within our Criminal Investigations Division and other units within our agency and other partner agencies. Through our patrol unit's rapid response following initial shot spotter notifications to the crime scene processing with our CSI technicians, all the way to arrest and prosecution, we're handling each case with meticulous care to ensure a swift conviction and lengthy incarceration for individuals attempting to wreak havoc within our community. I also want to point out that in the past year, we've seen an increase in the number of firearms ending up in the hands of our juveniles. This is a problem we're diligently working to address with investigations, proactive community engagement efforts such as our PAL program, media interviews, public service announcements, and social media feature videos. Since the beginning of this year, we have recovered over 65 firearms off of minors, 17 and below, and several of which were either involved in dangerous criminal activity or were being kept to initiate a dangerous crime. And you'll probably ask yourself, what is the youngest age that one of these guns was recovered from somebody? That was 14 years of age. And I want each of you in this room to think about what you were doing when you were 14 and were you thinking about carrying a gun. From January 1 to June 30th, in comparison to this time last year, we are up from 48 overall shootings to 61. That is unacceptable. That is unacceptable for our community. We're better than that. And it is something that we will not and we should not tolerate. Rest assured, we are working around the clock to ensure these criminals are arrested and sent to prison for a lengthy time span. I want to urge parents, talk with your kids about the importance of staying safe and not possessing guns. Minors under the age of 18 are not allowed to possess firearms in the city limits. Firing a firearm within the city limits is also prohibited. If they wish to go hunting and fire a weapon, they need to do so in an appropriate environment with adult supervision. I want to send a message to all of our residents, both juvenile and adults. If you engage in illegal criminal activity to include gun crimes, narcotics, or other destructive behaviors, and I've said this before, we will bend over backwards to arrest you. We're going to bend over backwards to arrest you. At this time, I will ask U.S. Attorney Easley to provide some remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. It's good to be here with you and with our District Attorney and, of course, our friends at the ATF and the Hanover County Sheriff's Office. This partnership is strong, And we're here today in part to announce a joint federal initiative that we've worked on together to try to confront and square off against violent crime in Wilmington, especially the shooters making bullets fly in the streets and those who have disdain for the basic freedoms we all should embrace. The ability to feel safe in our own neighborhood, the ability to walk and go out at night, the ability to trust that our kids can go walk to the bus stop in the morning and home in the afternoon and not have to worry about their well-being. That is what it means to be free. And we're not going to settle for anything less in the city of Wilmington, in the state of North Carolina, or anywhere in southeastern North Carolina, which our federal law enforcement partners are working vigorously to protect. Over the last year, we have worked side by side to identify, investigate, and prosecute the most significant drivers of gun violence in southeastern North Carolina and the New Hanover County and Wilmington communities specifically. We speak today with one team together, using one voice with one very clear message, that we're not going to settle for any level of gun violence in this community, and we're not going to stop until we bring an end to it. The efforts of this group working together along with the FBI and the United States Marshal Service has led to the federal indictment and arrest of 41 defendants who are on their way to federal prison. Those 41 cases have yielded 41 guns off the street, to include 5 fully automatic machine guns, 6 non-serialized ghost guns, and enough fentanyl to kill 20,000 Americans. Those are the caliber of cases that we are putting on a fast track for federal prosecution when appropriate. And we're doing it in tandem with state prosecutors who are equally aggressive. We're using every tool in the toolbox to be as forward-leaning on this threat as we can possibly be. I want to give you a few examples of the types of cases that comprise those 41. Just 3 weeks ago, Wilmington Blood gang member Shaquille Gregg sentenced to 120 months in federal prison after ditching a stolen gun into a daycare playground while he fled from police. Unique Timoni, a defendant who donned a ski mask to perpetrate a violent carjacking before leading law enforcement on a high-speed chase through Wilmington, sentenced to 17 years in federal prison for his crime. Charles Green, who shot up a funeral home here in Wilmington, leaving a man injured with multiple gunshot wounds, sentenced to 19 years in federal prison. And finally, Blood associate Desmond Hines, who I personally prosecuted 2 weeks ago here in Wilmington Courthouse, convicted, found guilty by a jury here in Wilmington, and facing up to 20 years or beyond in federal prison when he is sentenced later this year. The crimes are serious, the threat to the community is real, and the sentences are strong and fair, and we will impose them without flinching. Shooters should beware. If you pull a trigger in southeastern North Carolina, we will meet that investigation with every bit of vigor as we would a homicide. And if you can receive a heavy sentence in state court, our district attorney will pursue it. If we can get a heavier sentence in federal court, we'll pursue it there. Our sentences will be fair, they'll be appropriate, and they will send a strong message that we aren't going to tolerate gun violence in this community. Now, I want to close by reiterating something that Chief Williams opened with, that we can't do it alone. It's going to require the community to stand up and say, we've had enough. We're not going to allow our communities to fall into chaos. We're not going to live in a place that's less safe than our parents lived in. We're going to raise our hand. We're going to cooperate with law enforcement, and we're going to do justice and do it fair. Those who stoke fear in our communities have no place, and they are the enemy of our basic freedoms to live and work and enjoy the fruits of our labor the way the American dream promises. Now, I want the public to know this partnership is strong. We're working around the clock to keep Wilmington and the surrounding area as safe as we possibly can, and we won't stop. We won't lay down. We're bringing more prosecutors, more agents to the fight. We're going to stop only when this place is as safe as fair, and as free as Wilmington can possibly be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Chief, thank you. Good morning. Ben David, District Attorney for New Hanover and Pender counties. Let me start by saying what has already been said, and that is we run on relationships. This is a collaborative partnership that has yielded great results, and we are taking the war straight to drug traffickers, to gang members, to violent criminals who think they're in charge. They're not, we are, and we're going to stay in charge. I want to thank so many different organizations for the resources that have helped us with this fight. First, this was a dream of mine almost 20 years ago when I first became district attorney. George Holding, the U.S. attorney, and I were actually at Wake Forest Law School together and in private practice together before he became the U.S. attorney and I became the district attorney. And it was the friendship that turned into a partnership that led to something that we still celebrate, which is special assistant U.S. attorneys that are housed in our office, in the DA's office locally, but work now full-time in the U.S. Attorney's Office that Mike Easley Jr. oversees. There are 93 great districts around the country, some as large as whole states like South Carolina, others that are smaller because there are many within one state like in North Carolina, Eastern, Middle, and Western District. Of all those 93 districts in America, at points over this last 15 years that we've really had this partnership going, we have led the country in the number of cases that we have taken from the state system into the federal system in order to maximize the time that we are getting against these individuals that we're talking about again today. We have turned to the New Hanover County Commission and said, we need your resources. And that turned into great prosecutors that are standing with me today that I want to publicly thank. Will Van Trite, who's been with me for a decade, has spent the last 3 years as a cross-sworn federal prosecutor working directly with Mike Easley Jr. and his team of career prosecutors, many of whom are former senior prosecutors from my office, who are now housed permanently here in Wilmington, which we didn't used to have. So these grants turn into permanent positions. Brad Matthews, another 10-year prosecutor who works full-time in the DA's office in Wilmington, New Hanover County grant for gun crime. Because we said if everything's a priority, then nothing is. And our priority has always been gun crime and violent crime in general. You heard the statistics. From January till June 30, just that half calendar year, last year we had 48 shootings in Wilmington. This year it's 61. That's a disturbing trend. That's something that we obviously want to reverse. Homicides are down, but that's because their aim is bad, not because of their mercy. And you know, Wilmington is the place where we all live, or at least New Hanover County or Pender County, Brunswick County, whoever is listening right now, this region is our home. And what I've learned is that statistics in Washington, they have names in Wilmington. Names like Gail and Brian and Jessica and Christopher, or nicknames like Little Papa and Peanut. These are families who I've met. I speak for their dead children. In fact, I'm going to be speaking for Peanut in a courtroom a week from Monday when we start the first-degree murder trial of Malik Jones. And what I've learned about meeting these families is that we need to do everything we can to prevent these crimes and not just react to them. And when we have a crime, people need to stand up and say something. So a couple of things on that we just want to remind you while we have the cameras rolling today. The vast majority of these gun crimes we're up here talking about right now involve stolen firearms. They're stolen because kids aren't allowed to buy them, and you've heard just how many we have out there, and prohibited possessors, people who have domestic violence protective orders, or the ones who have been convicted of felonies and therefore can't go in to a gun shop or pawn shop to buy one. Guess where they're getting them from? They're getting them from your largely unlocked cars and homes. And so when Judge Corpening is saying to you, please put these in a gun safe, put trigger locks on them, and we have both of them for free at the sheriff's office or WPD, we're not kidding around, because these murders aren't happening in your neighborhood. They're happening in other neighborhoods, but we continue to hug and love on the families whose kids are never coming home. and I don't want to meet another family like this. So we need your help if you're a responsible gun owner of locking up your stuff, particularly those firearms. And if you witness this violence, and yes, that is largely happening in the inner cities and high poverty areas where there seems to be an us against them mentality. There's no us versus them except criminals versus everybody else. And we're going to win if we, the people, stay together. So if you don't want to get involved with a 911 call, text a tip. That's an anonymous way of doing that. All I can say is after 25 years of speaking for the dead, being a voice for victims of violent crime, and being your conscience anytime a crime occurs, there's no question that it is strong relationships followed by resources that is winning this fight. So I want to end by saying that to the sheriff who can't be here, my friend Ed McMahon, and to Chief Donnie Williams, the three of us have had a wonderful partnership with this man, the U.S. Attorney Mike Easley, and this man, Benny Mims, who you're going to hear from for a minute at ATF, and I could talk about other federal agencies like DEA. These resources have only increased with this New Hanover County Community Endowment, giving us $5 million to start a community justice center. These wonderful prosecutors I just mentioned, these police agencies I just said, we're going to go in with $5 million, not $350,000, to do some of the same great work we've been doing for years, only in a much better way. So if you are that person watching right now who thinks that you can tote around a gun or use it, or that you can somehow run your neighborhood and that people aren't going to snitch against you, I've got some terrible news. It's never been a worse time than right now to commit a crime here in the Port City. We are going to come after you with every resource we have. And when we do, we're not going to show mercy because you're not showing that to your victims. We're going to take you into the federal system if we can. We're going to use the Al Capone method to put you on a video if it means making a drug case. We're going to do anything we can to make sure we're keeping this community safe. And for the community watching, please lock up your guns and please continue to report crime. These officers who are all around us right now are putting their lives on the line every day going after these illegal guns and prohibited possessors. The least we can do to back them up is to show up in a courtroom for jury duty, and please help us with those preventative measures we talked about. I appreciate your time, and at this time I'd like to call on Special Agent in charge of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Division of Charlotte, and that is Mr. Benny Mims.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all. Again, good morning. My name is Benny Mims. I'm the Special Agent in charge for ATF, the Charlotte Field Division. So just want to say a couple of marks. First of all, I want to say thank you to United States Attorney Easley and my partners to my left and right for being the driving force of the Wilmington VCAP program. ATF is proud to be a partner of this collective effort. Addressing violent crime is an issue that no one agency can take on alone and to be successful. Our strategy of combating violent crime is consistently evolving, and we are fortunate that we have so many partners, state, local, federal, and the community, exchanging resources and information. ATF has always been focused on finding the worst of the worst. We go after trigger pullers, as well as gun traffickers and straw purchasers that put the guns in the hands of the wrong people. Those that the district attorney talked about being convicted felons, those with domestic violence, and juveniles. We're glad to have so many partners with this same focus. Together, we are recovering and tracing an incredibly high number of firearms in North Carolina. Just in 2002, North Carolina law enforcement recovered over 25,000 firearms in this state alone. Many are tied to violent crimes and homicides. We are also getting better at utilizing sharing crime gun intelligence, and specifically by utilizing ballistic tracing, also referred to as the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, also or NIVIN. Like firearms tracing, ballistic tracing can often lead us to the shooter, the trigger puller. In North Carolina, we had over 30,000 acquisitions last year, and because Wilmington has invested in a NIVIN machine, over 600 here of those 30,000 were here in Wilmington. With the help of United States Attorney, his office, our partners that are left and right, our state and federal and local partners, we're seeing it. We are also being successful addressing privately made firearms, also referred to as ghost guns in North Carolina. There was over 900 ghost guns recovered last year, over 1,000 the year before. It's still an issue, it's a national issue, and we are doing all we can to take on this issue. The same goes for Glock switches and machine gun conversion devices. Again, this is a national issue, but here locally, we're doing all that we can to take on these issues and using all the resources and information available to take on and combat that issue. Again, this work is not effective if we're not on the same page, and we are all on the same page. It's a great partnership, and that's really what I really want to express, that this is a great partnership. When you cross paths of federal, state, and all different types of agencies putting their resources in, that's where it comes in. But the work continues, and combating violent crime and the offenders that threaten the safety of our community is not over. We'll continue to do it. And the last thing I want to point out is, again, as everybody's commonly said here, we can't do this alone. Although we have a great partnership here with federal and state and local law enforcement agencies, prosecutors and agents and deputies and the sheriff's office here, we really take the help of the community to help us really close those gaps of information, only that information that the community has that we really need to do our jobs and be successful at doing our jobs. So that's all I have to say. We'll turn it back over to United States Attorney Michael Easley.
That's all we have. Any questions for the group?
I would just say, with you guys mentioning getting help from the public, I know a lot of times the public will know information about a case, but they are scared to put that information out there. What would you say to someone who maybe has information on a case and they're just a bit nervous to put that information out there in terms of retaliation?
As far as the Wilmington Police Department goes, there's two ways they can go about doing it. They can use our tip 411, and the way that system works is once they send the tip in, and my folks can correct me if I'm wrong, it goes up to Canada, and then it comes back down to us, so we have no idea where it's coming from. Or they can just star 67 and block their phone number and call the front desk of the Wilmington Police Department at 910-343-3600 and just give us the information. And it's so important because we will have conflicts brewing in the community, and folks out there know that these conflicts are brewing. And if they could just get us the information, we may be able to put resources in place to prevent that conflict from becoming the next shooting. So that's what I would say to the public. And they may think that they see something small, it doesn't mean a lot. Everything means something. So just get the information to us. Can't do it alone.
Yes, ma'am.
I know you guys talked about an increase in shootings, and a lot of it is because of minors having access to guns. Is there anything else that's contributing to this increase?
I would say, going back to what Ben hit on earlier, property crime has risen tremendously over the past year in this city, and a lot of it's coming from car break-ins. And I've mentioned this before, and I'm going to say it again. This device here, your cell phone, you don't leave it in your car unlocked, so why would you leave a firearm in there? So I think it's really important to remind people, don't leave your firearm in your car, and definitely don't leave it in there if the vehicle's unlocked. Keep that firearm with you at all times. If you're not using it, make sure it's secured in a safe box.
I would just echo that to say, it's a supply and demand issue, and a lot of times when you have more guns on the streets, you're going to have more shootings. And just to go back to one local strategy that really worked, that became state law, to kind of underscore what I'm talking about. Years ago, we had a huge increase in the number of overdose deaths that not coincidentally corresponded with the number of prescription pills that were being prescribed. We had a 4-fold increase in pain pills being prescribed, and then a 4-fold increase in overdose deaths. And the reason for that is people were getting prescribed pills lawfully at doctor's offices, at the emergency department, then they were getting hooked, and then they weren't able to refill those prescriptions, and so they went to the street, and then they were mixing in heroin and fentanyl and dying. So what we did to limit those overdose deaths and to limit the supply is we went to the doctors and we said, do no harm. That's the Hippocratic Oath. We were the place, North Carolina, but specifically New Hanover County was the place that said, we're going to limit the supply by having what we call the Stop Act. You can't get more than 8 pills prescribed, and we're going to stop giving out pain pills at the emergency department. And when we did that, the overdoses went way down. I would say the same thing with what we're talking about with gun crime. You have to go upstream. You have to go to these car breaking and enterings. These car breaking and enterings in particular, and home breaking and enterings, are feeding what we're seeing in the hands of our children, which are weapons. And these kids do not have the same judgment. They're much more impulsive. A lot of the cases we're seeing now, don't involve protecting drug turf. They're not anything that even involves a lover's triangle. A lot of times they're getting insulted online, and when your name is all you have, then it's justifiable homicide in their mind to go out and defend it by shooting somebody. And I mean, as crazy as that sounds, that's what we've got going on right now. So if you want to protect kids, lock up your gun. Seriously, that's the number one thing I'd say. And for those of you who have the information with who's beefing with who, the chief is right. It's outside the territorial jurisdiction of not only North Carolina, but the United States to have the server in Canada feed us the information that you have texted. So we do not know the identity of the people that are sending this information. And if you just give these guys the information, they'll chase it down and turn it into putting people at certain crime scenes with cell phones and videos and other witnesses. But at least get involved that way. I would go a step further and say, please come to court and testify also, because that's a huge issue, and you've watched as cases have had to get dismissed doing that. But at a minimum, anonymously report it through text to tip or the star 67 feature that the chief said.